Hello, hello, welcome, please come in. Our bow-only runs resume today in Dark Souls 2. After the interesting experience that was using a bow in Dark Souls 1, I'm really curious how bows hold up in the second game in the series. Dark Souls 2 changes a lot of mechanics from its predecessor. Let's see if that is for the better. My character will be starting as a bandit, because bow, and I'll take the healing wares because some passive healing is probably exactly what I'll need to heal myself through some of the early segments of the game, where my slow attack speed gets me a bit punished. And my first big concern is, as ever, arrows. I start with 25, but I won't be able to buy any more until I get access to Leningrad, which is not free. So for now at least, I'm just going to run through the Forest of Fallen Giants because I can't afford to waste anything. And considering that even sitting at this bonfire takes 4 of my very limited arrow stocks, yeah, that's not ideal. I prefer not to cheese a boss, but I think this run is going to need something to get me going out of the gate. And that, of course, means it's time to head over to Hyde's Tower of Flame. Because Dragon Rider is possibly the easiest boss to cheese in the entire series, when you do it right, which I manage on the second attempt. This gives me a healthy soul infusion, which means I can buy the blacksmith key to unlock Leningrad. That means I now have access to weapon upgrades and arrows. So I get my short bow to +3 for damage and spend all the rest of my souls on the cheapest arrows, which are, sadly, 3 times more expensive than they were in DS1, which is not ideal. Good news is I can now 2-shot these knights if I aim well. Bad news is I'm bad at aiming. Alright, time for the first boss, Pursuer. Obviously fighting it here is optional, but this arena is arguably easier than the proper arena later on. On the other hand, my damage would likely also be better later because I'd have time to increase my stats. So it's kind of a wash. Except this is going to take a very long time. Good news is that bows feel a bit less awkward to use. Your character no longer has to release the bow and redraw to turn more than 10 degrees. Still pretty slow and unwieldy though. And the ability to attack at range should still be a pretty nice boon. I mean, it's not really helpful against the Pursuer because it's pretty mobile, but there are some attacks that I can punish by just standing slightly out of range. Watching this back, I'm actually surprised my bow isn't about to break. I've shot just over 100 arrows. But killing that boss has given me some souls to work with, so let's buy some arrows to get me up to 400, and some better armor for more defense. And then some health and endurance for survivability. And then some points of dexterity. I really need my damage to be higher. That extra damage means I can now 2-shot some enemies without aiming good. It's still bad, but it is better. Alright, next boss time. Last Giant, and this fight is as easy as always. Last Giant does have a pretty good range on his attacks, especially when I haven't yet been able to put any points in adaptability, but he's also pretty fragile, even for my weak damage. And I can hit him from any distance thanks to the magic of ranged attacks. So that's another boss down. Not the worst start in the world. Definitely still not great though. Time to pick up the Chloranthy Ring and a Titanite Slab for much later. Then run over to the Pursuer's proper arena to take the bird taxi to the Lost Bastille. Not super sure why I did all that with 8,000 souls burning a hole in my pocket, but that's fine I guess. Time to spend those souls before I die on more dexterity. I need so much more damage. Now that I have access to the Lost Bastille, it's time to... That was supposed to be a roll, not a backstep. Anyway, this chest contains some valuables. On the other hand, this Pursuer is worth a decent chunk of souls. You know, I'm gonna take the chest contents and run. My damage is just too awful. And thank you Fire Arrows for salvaging blowing up this wall. Seriously, this stupid barrel really hates me. But that means I now have access to better Blacksmith, and he sells large Titanite shards. Which are expensive, but getting my bow up to +6 is very much worth it. Just look at that marginally acceptable damage. And fun as the Bastille has been, it's time to sidetrack to No Man's Wharf, an area where everything is dark and you really should light torches, which is very obnoxious to do when you have to two-hand your bow to attack. Good news is that the kind of inhospitable areas to move through are actually really conducive to shoot things from a distance. But other than taking forever and a slightly panicked run at the bell, this area isn't too bad. Unlock the shortcut, and there's an illusory wall here? I wasn't even trying to open it, I was just curious what this message said. Alright then. Gavlan! Buy all my garbage, please. Normally I wouldn't bother talking to you, but souls are precious when you also have to buy arrows. Also, I need Gavlan to advance to a later point in his quest. For reasons. I'll get to it. Oh, you know what I never actually did? Go through the mansion with the mansion key. And there's an Estus flask shard down here, so I feel very silly. Let's do some leveling. Of dexterity, because more damage. Flexile Sentry is next up on the list. The arena here is pretty small, and flooding, and my damage isn't great. But ranged attacks mean I am mostly safe to just keep backing away and firing randomly. Really need to upgrade adaptability at some point. My dodge rolls are so bad. Taking the ship means access to the Lost Bastille and another pursuer fight. My damage is definitely better at this point, but having to deal with dogs is not what I want at all. Let's try this one more time and be a bit more thorough. You know, I wonder how much each of these pursuer fights have cost me. I could figure it out, but then I would feel sad. Another pursuer dead, and I can take the Cage Evader up to straight Zell. And he definitely gets one of my fragrant branches. Except I'm actually too stupid for him to be willing to talk to me. Apparently you need 3 int and 3 faith, and I have an int of 1. So I guess I'll put a couple points in intelligence in case I need boss weapons later. Next on my list is heading back to Hyde's Tower. Not really sure why, but okay. Killing the random enemies here so that they don't interrupt me fighting the dragon is pretty time consuming, but the dragon itself is pretty... Really? You couldn't run that extra 2 feet? Stupid DS2 hitboxes. Anyway, that boss dead, let's see how old Dragonslayer goes. Well, at least I can just run back. Seriously, Orny and Smoo were a one-shot, but OD is gonna get a KO? Embarrassing. Second attempt proceeds without any issues. OD is very easy to fight once you properly remember the attack patterns, and all those souls get me some levels and a bunch more arrows. Maybe I just fought him for the souls? Huh. Oh well. Next on my list is Ruin Sentinels. This is of course a 3v1 fight, kind of, which I don't prefer, and I managed to die before the other 2 Sentinels even get involved. What's the plan here? Just throwing myself at bosses is going to be a complete waste of time, and more importantly, arrows. Okay, new plan. I'm gonna head back to No Man's Wharf to grab another fragrant branch, and this branch gets to be a gift for Rosabeth, which will unlock the Shaded Woods, because it's about time to do some nonsense progression. The enemies here are a bit stronger than I'd really like to be dealing with, but there aren't really any ranged threats. There are invisible threats though, not that they're actually that dangerous if you just keep running. And at least if I need to kill one, I can aim in first person. It is a bit time consuming though. My actual destination is the Doors of Pharos, but I do need to kill Najka first. Despite having some ranged attacks, Najka is a very easy fight. Her attacks are easy to dodge, most have pretty significant recovery periods where it's very easy to get in repeated hits. It's really just run around a bit, shoot some arrows, repeat until dead. And that means I have reached my destination, the Doors of Pharos. What do you mean Gavlin's not here yet? He's in Harvest Valley. What is he doing there? I need him here. Fine, I'll head over to the Huntsman's Copse. Ugh. You know, having a bow for these obnoxious poison butterflies is actually pretty nice. Ah, here's my greatest foe. An enemy with a shield. That's never gonna change, is it? Okay, Rowena, are you going to be cool and let me take that key? And the answer is yes, actually, which I was not expecting. NPCs are really bad at rolling bow attacks in this game, it turns out. You know, I should probably hop back to Leningrass to buy some more standard arrows for the next boss. And back to Majula to upgrade my flask, because it's time for Skeleton Lords. A usually very easy boss that I suspect is going to be a bit of a problem, because hordes of small enemies are the exact thing bows are bad at dealing with. I mean, on top of everything else in the game. But this fight is often pretty easy thanks to area effect spells or big chunky weapons. I have tiny plinky arrows. Okay, first big batch is done, which was actually the concern. The second group is much smaller, and the skeletons don't really seem that much more durable. And the third Lord dropping summons Bone Wheels, but they have been heavily nerfed from DS1. So sad. But also correct, who thought the DS1 Bone Wheels were a good idea? Anyway, Harvest Valley, the most poisony place this side of... Actually, this area is shockingly not winning that argument. There's really just so much poison in every game. Clearing out all the items in this area is easier than normal, since I can snipe skeletons from safety. Gavlan, hello. Please advance to your final destination. I need you to be there. Okay, Gavlan is at his final resting spot, the Doors of Pharos, which means he will now sell me infinite poison arrows. For anyone who's played this game, or watched my dagger-only run, you will know how strong that is. For those who don't, please enjoy this fight against the Ruin Sentinels. Yeah, poison is really busted in this game. Sir, madam, or otherwise, can you please stop doing the spinning attack I just refused to dodge? Thank you. That was definitely a better Ruin Sentinels fight. Okay, my dexterity is 40. I guess I'll finally put some points in adaptability. Back to the Shaded Woods, and these phantoms can be poisoned? But how? Dark Souls 2 is so stupid sometimes. Anyway, I'm actually here to free Ornifex from this cell so I can meet up with her right down the road. Okay, time to actually progress through the Doors of Pharos, which is a 2-minute run-through as ever. And it's time for Spiderland. Everybody loves the land of infinite spiders. And the next boss, the Prowling Magus, which was almost difficult once ever. Not in this playthrough, mind you, where being able to shoot enemies from a distance makes this already easy fight even easier. Into Tsaltora, and wow, these mages are a lot less scary when I too can shoot them from half a mile away. The glorious benefits of bows. And then I get invaded by Bowman Guthrie, who is also really bad at dodging ranged attacks. Hi, Ornifex. I can't really afford them yet, but Ornifex here will sell fire arrows that should be a bit useful at least. And it's into the next boss, which may actually be a bit tricky. Normally this fight is pretty easy, as the main difficulty comes from managing the boss and the many spider adds. However, the spiders will stay away from you if you have a torch out, which I can't do because of the whole bow thing I've got going. The good news is that my regular and fire arrows deal pretty good damage, and hitting the heads to deal damage is actually a lot easier than I expected. I also realized that the fire arrows can one-shot the little spiders, making them a lot less dangerous to you little something. Back into the fight, I don't really have any change in strategy other than focusing on my fire arrows against the little spiders to remove them from the arena as quickly as possible, but that's really all I need. This boss has been a bit tricky with ranged options before, but arrows fire faster and track better than spells ever have. Back to Majula to get some levels in adaptability, and check out the upgrades on the new composite bow I bought from Ornifex. It has better scaling with dex, and that means it has 1 more attack power than the short bow. I mean, it's slightly less upgraded, but I would have liked that number to be higher. Oh well, someday. Okay, back to the Lost Bastille to deal with another pursuer. This fight goes way faster than previous pursuer fights thanks to all my poison arrows. Thank you, Gavlin. But I mostly pop back here to grab the Bastille key because, whoops, all that weird progression and I completely forgot to fight the Lost Sinner. So, light some fires and it's into the fight. My damage itself is pretty good, although Sinner is actually fast enough to make getting off attacks kinda tricky. Seriously, I think I really would have struggled if I'd come here any earlier. Trying to fire arrows is just really tight timing. Oh well, managed it anyway. My damage just maxed and my adaptability is where I want it, so I can actually start putting points in Vigor for some additional health. Back to Poisonland, and it's a quick sprint over to the Covetous Demon. My damage is decent, and at range, and it's the Covetous Demon. Next. Huh, this area is actually a lot easier when you can snipe the random enemies all around the map. Then light a windmill on fire, then just some more running. My build is mostly done for the game, so there really isn't that much I actually care about in any of the game's areas. Okay, next up is Mitha. She has her own ranged attacks, but they are mostly harmless. More dangerous is her ability to lunge with her spear. Fortunately, she's also very frail, so the fight does not take very long. Iron Keep? I don't wanna... Alright, so my damage against the Elan Knights isn't great. It's not terrible, but definitely not good. My damage against the NPC invaders is definitely better. Seriously, why can none of these NPCs dodge bow attacks? I feel like they were pretty good at dodging sorceries. This area is so tedious, but I do manage to get the half bridge dropped and into the Smelter Demon fight. Huh. My damage is pretty bad, but my actual goal is to proc poison on it. Takes longer than I'd like, but once poison goes off, it deals a lot of damage, and I forgot that attack is a shockwave in phase 3. Alright, but with the bridge half dropped, I can easily rush back to the boss, and my strategy is basically the same. I will say, bows are bad, but being able to keep my distance from Smelter Demon is really helpful to avoid the passive AoE damage. I mean, I'm still awful at dodging this attack. Okay, let's actually drop down to lighter armor for faster rolls. I think that's going to do a lot to help me dodge attacks, which is really what's important here. And yeah, the extra iframes and dodge speed is exactly what I needed. Okay, Smelter Demon down, and it only took a few attempts. I count that as a win. And I went ahead and purchased some new armor. The defenses are lower, but it also weighs a lot less than what I had equipped before, and it looks cooler. Okay, time to rush through the second half of the Iron Keep. Good lord, I have a gift for getting headshot during this drop. I'm just so good at it. This time, I'm just gonna shoot these idiots so I don't get shot with a great bow. Then through the guillotine hallway, light the bonfire, and whoops! Did somebody pause the recording to step away for a moment and never restart it? Yup. So, I actually have no footage of beating the Iron King. Fortunately, this is an easy boss fight who can be poisoned, and is particularly vulnerable to being hit with ranged attacks. So you didn't miss anything. I definitely won't do that again. Certainly not in the same series. That would be super embarrassing for me. Oh shoot, I forgot about Chariot. Oh, Chariot! Did you think I was going to let you live? I will say Chariot is actually more dangerous than normal, mostly because I don't have a shield to hide in these little alcoves. It's still fine though, I'm considerably higher level than I would normally be here, and this horse can be poisoned, so it doesn't even take very long. See you next time, Chariot. Anyway, that unlocked nothing, except a momentary reprieve from thoughts of vengeance, so it's time to drop down a well. Or pit, actually, wells have water. And that means it is rat time. Wow, I really wish I had any area attacks or sweeping weapons. Good thing when the Rat King does show up, my arrows deal pretty big damage. And that means it's gutter time! An area made considerably trickier by the fact that I can't shoot a bow and hold a torch at the same time. I have been through this area enough times that I do broadly know the route through, and I can always light a fire, shoot a hollow, relight my torch. Which doesn't actually save me from falling to my death like an idiot. Twice, but it helps. It's only twice. Thrice. And then Black Gulch, through which I run badly, and run again, and into the Rotten fight. Rotten isn't too bad. He does have some sweeping attacks that can be a bit tricky to dodge, but he's also vulnerable to poison. Well, vulnerable may be a bit generous. He is not immune to poison, and that's all I really care about. Hi, Aldia. Yes, thank you for the notes, and goodbye. Okay, 4 great souls in my pocket. Time to pop back to the Shaded Wood, because I can now pass through the Shrine of Winter. And that gets me to scenic Drangleic Castle. Then the always fun, trying to kill enemies to get these golems to open this stupid giant door. Inside, Chancellor Welliger will sell both magic and lightning arrows. These may end up being useful. They also may not, I don't really remember. Guess we'll find out together. And it's time to explore Drangleic, which I would normally just run straight through, but 1, these statues seem comically resistant to bow attacks, and do not slouch on offense, but also 2, there is something here I want. And that is it. This. The Hunter's Black Bow. Because I've been making do with a subpar bow this entire time. The Black Bow, that's where the damage really is. But before I can upgrade that, I want to get to the next bonfire to save my progress. Good thing is that the next boss is just the twin dragon riders. I can't trick them into falling down a pit to their deaths, but they are both vulnerable to poison, and that's basically as lethal as gravity. Okay, back to blacksmith to upgrade my new bow. Oh, I don't have enough regular titanite? Okay, over to the other blacksmith to upgrade my bow. Okay, that's 240 upgrade to 270, and the black bow isn't even maxed out yet. I think I'm gonna like my new bow. I mean, a good chunk of my damage is coming from poison, but more base damage is always nice. Alright, next boss time. Looking Glass Knight, owner of the big shield that is filled with lies. 95% physical block might. Though honestly, just slowly circling it clockwise mostly avoids the shield. And the Looking Glass Knight is vulnerable to poison, which is always great. Its little summon also has a big shield, but it is much worse at using it and dies pretty quickly. This lets me finish the fight without too much difficulty, which is good because I was running out of Estus from all the attacks I decided I just shouldn't dodge. Zeph, come on bud, do better. Excuse me for one moment while I scream into the uncaring void because it is time, once more, for the Shrine of Amana. And okay, it is less miserable than normal. The bow is pretty good. Probably not worth bringing a bow in a casual run unless you're already statted out to the max in dexterity, but at least that's a small boon for bows. I mean, the area still sucks. This place always sucks for just so many reasons. Just having a maxed out bow and dex at the soft cap means it sucks less. Small mercies. Very small mercies. Alright, time to rush to the last section. It's time for the boss fight of this stupid area. Demon of Song. And there isn't really anything to get into here. Ranged attacks invalidate basically all of the boss's attacks, other than this bubble attack that I honestly don't know that I knew it had. But whatever, it's not a one-shot and the boss is vulnerable to poison, just like everything is. Now it's time for the Undead Crypt. This emo boy sells dark arrows, which, do I use these either? I don't, right? Anyway, this is pretty easy to rush through. I mean, it'd be easier if I weren't carrying a stupid torch the whole time. But whatever, swings and roundabouts. Velstadt, what have you got for me? Running attacks that aren't that bad? Vulnerable to poison? Oh, you do have that self-buff. That would require you to hit me, though. Even once. So nice, Velstadt dead and I have the King's Ring. Almost done now, only a few bosses left to go. And because I've cleared the Undead Crypt, I can buy a few Titanite chunks from you to upgrade the Black Bow to +10. That's right, S scaling and 40 dexterity is going to do some work. Brace yourself, endgame bosses, I have murdering to do. After taking some time to upgrade my cool kid armor. Okay, we are pressing into the endgame now. First destination is Aldia's Keep, a very simple area that is easy to run through, mostly because the enemies will politely clear a path for you if you let them, which I do. And it's time for the boss Guardian Dragon, who is weak, vulnerable to poison, and easy to shoot from a distance. Everyone gets on the Prowling Magus for being a crap boss, but at least the Prowling Magus is fairly unique in the game. You kill the Guardian Dragon and then see a whole area full of the exact same dragon. Pay no attention to the death, by the way. I committed a bit too hard to shooting this dragon to death quickly. That's better. Then I can skip the Dragonary thanks to this one zipline, and it's time for the Dragon Trials. This stupid trial takes more attempts than I'd like, but a lot fewer attempts than it could have thanks to the magic of poison. I really do just love poison in this game, it's so good. Dragon Heart acquired, time to hop into the only giant memory I care about, to face the next boss, the last giant. And this boss is really boring. He only has 2 attacks that he can use when you're on this platform, both are easy to dodge, and he's vulnerable to poison. And that's it, all the bosses I care about done, so it's time for the final sequence. And first up is Watcher and Defender. Bows do really struggle with multiple targets. Trying to manage 2 enemies who are both trying to kill you is already a lot. But it's made even more difficult when your damage is really bad and your attacks take forever. On the other hand, Defender actually goes down way earlier than I expected thanks to the magic of poison. Good thing is that, with only 1 target to focus on, I can actually take down Watcher very, very quickly. Again, thanks to poison. She tries to resurrect Defender, but it's simply too late. Hello, Nishandra. I'm here for the throne. Nishandra is already a bit of a joke, especially when you have ranged attacks to ignore her curse globes. Sure. The most interesting part of this fight is when I accidentally almost walk off the edge. But I don't, and the combination of poison and lightning finishes off the final boss. And that is Dark Souls 2, beaten with only bows. That was pretty interesting. In some ways it felt very similar to DS1, with bosses being comically unequipped to deal with ranged attacks. On the other hand, bows are way easier to use in DS2, so that was definitely a step up. But I will have more to say about that in the summary video out in a few weeks. I did want to shout out that I do have a Patreon, linked in the description. I spend a lot of time making these videos. So if you enjoyed the video, want to support the channel, and are financially stable enough to do so, that exists. No pressure though, this channel is free to enjoy for everyone and will remain that way. For now, if you liked this video, be sure to hit the like button. If you'd like to see more of this, feel free to subscribe. Hey, maybe leave a comment if you have something you'd like to say. But whatever you decide to do, have a safe trip home.